So, December already, huh?
Sure is, but where's...
For thousands of years I lay dormant. Who dares? Oh, hey, it's award season again.
Yep, there he is.
Did it just rise from a coffin?
Well, you heard it here, folks. It's that time of year again. Holiday season, game awards, and more importantly, our look at what's up with the award shows. Welcome to the Music Arcade. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the Sound Guy Firestone.
I'm Monica.
And I'm Eddie, and sleeping in a coffin causes such a pain in the neck you wouldn't believe.
I do believe it. I had eye surgery a couple months ago, and that made me sleep in some weird positions with weird things on my face, and it sounds like that's still preferable to a coffin.
So that's why Dracula was so cranky in Vampire Survivors.
Oh, we'll be talking about that for sure later. But, hello and welcome to our anniversary. How many years has it been? Like 4 now? Feels
I
like
think so.
Yep, sounds about right. To think this all started with a Twitter meme, and we don't even know if that account still exists on Twitter.
So, as our first episode was the Game Awards, we've kind of ended up with this anniversary/holiday tradition of covering the Game Awards.
Yeah, or at least covering the best soundtrack of the year selection, if only because it's a good starting point, and I think that applies here, but not in a traditional sense this time.
Oh, I'm mildly salty about all of these choices. There are so many remakes on here, including one that's almost note for note, just better orchestration. I'm just like, what is the point? Congratulations. Like, my exact complaint about Final Fantasy VII Remake in the first episode still stands. Like, these aren't the best soundtracks of today. They're the best soundtracks of 20 years ago.
Hey, spoilers on my conclusion.
I love how you say spoilers for something we've been saying pretty consistently for 4 years now.
I know. Just having fun with it.
But there are some interesting choices on here.
Yeah, and I think the way it's all arranged, there's certainly enough room for at least half an episode's worth of discussion, so shall we get on with it and start talking about Astro Bot?
I hate this.
Excellent. Go on.
This just... I'll be honest, this sounds like Mario, but with robot noises that just make it annoying.
I can see what you mean, especially 3D Mario. It definitely has that vibe of...
Yeah.
Which makes sense given that the gameplay is kind of inspired by N64 collectathons.
Yeah, and now I'm going to be honest, I actually thought this soundtrack was really cute. I could definitely see why you're annoyed, Eddie, though. Like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. Maybe it's just because I am a sound effects guy myself, but I like the use of weird doodads as instruments. I think it's really creative. It doesn't annoy me the same way.
It's not poor quality, it's just the exact kind of music designed to annoy me specifically.
Oh yeah, no, I totally understand that.
You mean you aren't taken by the profundity of the lyrics to I Am Astro Bot, which are I Am Astro Bot?
Yes, that's exactly what I would say. How could you guess? Yeah, I took the time for each of the Game Awards nominees. I added on my notes a highlight song, which I think is the best song for the soundtrack. For this one, it took me a bit. For the most time, my notes was just highlight. I have no idea. But then I came across a song called, I'm gonna butcher the French here, Quel fromage. I guess that's how you pronounce it, more or less.
It's hardly a butchering.
That's an improvement for me, I guess.
I think we've been hanging around each other long enough for some of what we say to rub off.
I'm willing to say in my case it's that Gojira Olympics influence.
Also possible.
Fair enough.
Because I know you were deep down that rabbit hole. Probably still are.
You bet. I bought 2 Gojira t-shirts in a week.
Wow.
Nice.
But yeah, this song it does say a lot that the soundtrack is by Kenneth Young, and this song is by Sashiko Miyano, Takuro Iga, and Tadashi Yatabe. So, all Japanese folks, none of them is the main composer. The title is in French, and the song sounds sort of like New Orleans jazz.
Yes.
I didn't get to that one on my listen through of the soundtrack, but that has me very intrigued.
I think this ties into one of my first remark I have in my note, which is that it is strange to essentially try and build an iconic identity for Astro Bot, but on a ramshackle disparate pieces and bases. It's sharing a console, but very little else. At least it's not a PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, but when it comes to a unifying theme, there's clearly a lot of room on which to go, and they chose as a unifying element the robot part, which makes sense, but if you don't like the little disc scratches and bleep bloops, you're not going to like the whole binding agent of the soundtrack.
I can totally see how this would get on people's nerves. I 100% can see that. I'm not sugarcoating that in the least.
Yeah, especially since beyond just the sounds used, like... To take an example of one of the track Crash Site...
Is that the one with the phone noises? I think that's the one with the phone noises.
I don't think so. It's the one that sounds like a Western movie-inspired horseback riding theme, but with Fall Guys as a layer on top of it.
Yeah, I actually like that one. Like,
I don't dislike this. It's just that the identity is what bothers me more than the music themselves.
That's fair.
Honestly, Crash Site actually was one of the songs that I thought was like more enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
It's not entirely a song that I would listen to on my free time, but it is, let's say, less abrasive than most of the soundtrack. It's not as hard on the robotic noises.
There's another one that I found passing by, which had disco in its name, and I have yet to find a video game track that's or modern recreation that manages to invoke disco music successfully in my book. It's like people forgot how to do it. It's weird.
Tell that to Daft Punk and Lizzo. But that's
that has a point.
Lizzo I have yet to listen to. Daft Punk, okay, I'll grant you Daft Punk.
Yeah, About Damn Time is flat out a disco track, just made in 2023? 2022? It's good. It's a good song.
Who knows when they made this?
However, as for this soundtrack, the one I liked was, I believe, Cool Spring. It had like the steel drum in there that I thought was really cool. I don't know. This one I have some amount of affection for. Like, Eddie, you described it earlier as taking inspiration from Collectathon's Just Robotified, and I'm like, that sounds like a feature, not a bug. I'm kind of down with that because it does sell what the game is. For something that is essentially banking on nostalgia, it's sending its message pretty loudly.
Like, of all the picks for the Video Game Awards, this feels like the most... almost want to say honest.
I would disagree.
If nothing else, it knows where it stands.
It knows where it stands, and it is doing something different while also still maintaining a classic feel. I did find it kind of funny that the soundtrack was released via Sony Classical, by the way. But yeah.
Also, one thing I really liked was for the outright reprises.
Yeah.
In particular, the God of War part was cool because they played with the fact that the God of War and Astro Bot are two completely different atmosphere, and use it with the original composer, no less, apparently, to make something with the source material that the source material could not do by itself. This I absolutely love.
Like, this is not a lazy pick by an awards committee. This is I totally understand why this is here.
I get
it.
it.
Yeah, is this my favorite soundtrack? No, but I get
Essentially, by picking this soundtrack, they picked like 17 different soundtracks taped together with duct tape.
It does have 87 tracks on the official album, so you're more or less on the right track there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said, I hate it because I don't like these sounds.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
But I respect the artistry going on here. I can definitely see why this was why this is going to be on an award show, and I think by the time our episode goes live, the award show will have happened already. But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I imagine the soundtrack is better when actually playing, because it really feels for a lot of tracks, especially a lot of the originals, that the sound is part of a whole localized with the visuals, with the references, to make a little ball of, hey, remember that? And essentially, it's part of individual vibes connected together. And we don't have the whole picture because we haven't played the game.
Yeah,
but the pieces themselves, the musics themselves, aren't elevating anything. They're part of the thing.
Yeah, I've seen some, admittedly very short gameplay videos, and that seems to follow very well. It kind of also draws a parallel to what I mentioned about this sounding kind of like Mario, because some of the Mario soundtracks are great and you can definitely listen to them in a vacuum, like Super Mario Galaxy. But there
that one you can listen to in the vacuum of space.
Ha ha ha
ha. But Mario at the same time does also have some games where the soundtrack, if you were to listen to it in a vacuum, it would come off as like sort of forceful jolliness.
Yes.
So I can see how I've seen it in videos how this works better in the game.
Context is a big deal, as we've discussed on this show time and time again. Hell, we did a whole episode on it earlier this year where we took things deliberately out of context to see if we could figure out what it was trying to be, and let's just say, for the most part, our interpretations were fairly off.
Now then, shall we move on to the second pick? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
This is one that what I've listened to, I will say, I like in a vacuum, but this does not deserve to be here.
Really?
Yeah.
To be fair, there are some original tracks. The very first one was a Hamauzu track, but like, it's just Hamauzu.mp3. It's not even as good as what he did for FF13.
I found that there were more original tracks, but at least in Remake, and I got different vibes from Remake, actually, which is interesting. Because, like, one of the very first episodes, main slam dunk, if I do say so myself, was listening to the 7 Remake soundtrack, and in particular the Airbuster bar stream, and managing to figure out how it differed from being just a remake and being more of an examination of the original. And this one doesn't, like, there is one track that gave me a similar vibe, which was the Cosmo Canyon theme. The rest felt either more like a straightforward remake or original track, so it feels like it's trying to branch out.
I don't know about that. Like, that's the thing. It almost feels like it's trying to close ranks. I don't want to talk about the big plot twist of FF7 Remake because
I think it's doing both at the same time.
That's weird. Because I know, I know from a friend complaining that it was too much like the original, and this is why he didn't like the second disc or the second part of FF7 originally, and it skewed too close to it, was his mind, and I'm just like...
You make it sound like instead of doing what the first did, which was take the original as a starting point and then veer left and right a bit frantically, this time they just stuck to the line and then added stuff instead of twisting stuff.
Yeah.
And that's in the soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it does sound that way. I don't know. My exact same argument remains, honestly. This is absolutely the best soundtrack of 1997. Is it the best soundtrack of 2024? I'm extremely dubious.
I'm honestly even less equipped to talk about this than usual, because I think we already are very well familiar with the fact that I haven't really played Final Fantasy VII.
Right.
But I was checking the soundtracks via Spotify. I think you guys were checking through YouTube.
Correct.
Yeah.
And on Spotify, at least on Brazil, this game is the only one of the 5 here that is not fully available. They only have a preview EP right now.
Cool. That's awful. I'm not a fan.
So yeah, I could only check like 5 or 6 songs, and I guess my favorite was Rufus's Welcoming Ceremony, which we already talked about in another episode this year.
Look, I will...
You know, favorite 6 songs is about as much as another nominee for the Grammys.
We will talk about that later.
I sure will.
I will say this much. I went about halfway into the soundtrack. Genova Emergent is a great song. It's still just a remake of Genova, but like still, it's a great song.
Like, you can take that base and make multiple good songs with it.
Oh yeah.
As they do in the original itself.
Yeah, as they do and as they are. Like, no, it's really good. So, again, I'm not like knocking any of the compositional quality of this. It just feels like it feels far too derivative to be here right now.
Yes.
It's more like some of the albums that this is competing with, most of the album, really, it is new composition. This one is new arrangement. And those are like different skill sets.
We're going to be talking about that again. Not too far.
Like,
we will. We will.
For 4 of the 5 picks, I like all of those soundtracks by themselves as musics. It's just, why are you here?
Yeah. Yeah.
The one that's the least questionable is the one that's coming up next, which is Metaphor ReFantazio.
So I have been struggling with whether or not to purchase this game. And that is because Atlas is weird lately.
Yeah.
Because they always, like, 2 years later, release a better version of the same game. And I'm like, do I just wait for Metaphor ReFantazio? So this is the first time I actually heard the soundtrack.
My money my hope is on them naming it Metaphor Final Fantasio.
Ha.
I will say that it says a lot that Galen's idea of ReFantazio sounds very plausible.
Oh yeah.
I hate that it is.
Like, I looked it because it was on sale for the latest Steam sale and was like, oh yeah, I didn't have time to play it this year. Should I get it? Oh right, I should play the better version when it comes up in a year.
Uh-huh. Because this has happened every time lately. SMT5 Vengeance, Persona 5 Royal, so
they
on
even
and so
did it
forth.
with a remake.
They did.
They're
They
basically
absolutely did.
doing what Capcom used to do to Street Fighter.
Right.
Exactly.
So, unfortunately, that makes me want to wait for Championship Edition, so I haven't actually played this yet. So this is my first, exposure to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is cool.
I will say I'm very glad we just had this conversation and I took part in it, because this was a rare JRPG where I was looking at the screenshots and going, this actually seems like it might be fun. And then I just heard you guys talk about all the re-release and I went, nope, I'm waiting.
Might as well save yourself the trouble.
Run for the hills.
Like, run for your lives.
My first listening of it was the battle theme when you have the advantage. So it starts, it's alright, it's fun, maybe a bit generic, and then the voice kick in.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, now I get it. Now that's an SMT spin-off game.
It absolutely is, to the point where, I've been holding this. This is the answer to the question, what if Strange Journey actually had a good soundtrack?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Because
I heard the song outside of context. Is the one you're talking about the one titled Warriors in Valor? Because that
Possibly,
sounds like it.
Possibly, I haven't noted the name.
Yeah, because I listed that one as my highlight for this soundtrack, because the vocals here really do make it more unique.
Yeah, and there's a lot of track with those.
Yeah, if it were just the instrumentation, I think it would have felt like just another anime soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah. The vocals really do add a whole other level of energy.
But that would be cool enough by itself. But then they have the human theme, which my understanding is that it's a type of weirdo boss whose name is human as a fantasy creature weird name twist. And on this one, there is no vocals. Instead, there is just discordance everywhere, and it's absolutely unsettling, and it works great.
Yeah. Out of the 5 that I heard, this one was the one I was most excited for.
Absolutely.
I hope it wins. It won't, obviously, because FF7's right there, but I hope it does.
Yeah. And one of the things I did note, however, is that I feel like while playing the game, it might get a bit irritating after a while, because a lot of the field themes, even a lot of the city themes, feel extremely oppressive. Like Dragon Guard 1 soundtrack levels of oppressive.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, how messed up is the world?
I can't wait to find out in 2 years when the better version comes out.
You walk in a jolly little port town and it sounds like you're about to be crushed by a super tanker out of nowhere.
As
like,
someone who
this level of musical oppression reminds me of that time I spent 2 continuous days at a friend's place for some cosplay matters, and there was only Metalocalypse music running in the background on and on and on again for hours and hours until I had to say stop. And I like myself my metal, but
as someone who listens to a lot of dark folk on my free time and who loves Metalocalypse, aka Death Clock, I don't see what's wrong with this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm kind of with Eddie on this one. I'm like, I would put on a Spotify playlist of like all sorts of crazy heavy metal for hours on end, even when I'm just sitting quietly reading.
I am a fragile and delicate flower. But yeah, my final remark on this soundtrack is also that compared to every other soundtrack, it's a relief that this is the one that's like, this artist composed this soundtrack, not a tangled hodgepodge of arrangements from previous composers.
Yes. On the subject of hodgepodges of previous composers, Silent Hill 2 is the exact same soundtrack. What the hell?
Yeah. I don't know the original by heart, but I can tell it's very much the orchestrated original.
Yeah, I listened to Theme of Laura. It was
original.
Note for note the original version, just with live instruments now.
Yeah, it's a solid, it's melancholic, it's got stifling pieces, but that was from 2001.
Yeah. Akira Yamaoka was and is great. 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of the few songs, I haven't played the original. Again, not really usually a survival horror guy.
Me neither, and I played it.
Well, I guess I am the flower here. But of the songs that I did recognize, the most I could say about the quote-unquote new versions is that they have a bit more of etherealness in the background, maybe? But like, Signalis came out, last year, I think? And Signalis is basically we're taking Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, and we're doing a different, more industrial thing with it. And it kind of
Imagine doing a different thing with the soundtrack. That would be a nice change.
Yeah, it kind of begs the question. Well, we know the answer is Konami, but still, it begs the question of why Silent Hill 2's remake didn't at least change things a little bit.
Konami.
Yeah, Konami is the answer. Admittedly, for the most part, that's worked out for them. The Dominus Collection, for example, is just those games, which is good.
Yeah, and they're great. I'm happy I can play them without having to dust off my DS.
Yeah.
I would be unhappy to find the Dominus Collection as a pick for the soundtrack of the year.
Same.
I will argue that Dominus Collection has more going for it because the DS sound chip and its sound what do you call the speakers? Its sound chip and its speakers were kind of garbage.
Well, yeah.
So the Dominus Collection make it sound
that's why you put on your headphones.
Yeah, as a result, the Dominus Collection sounds way, 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 way better.
Yeah, but
Silent
that's...
Hill 2 is basically the same even in that regard.
It's basically nothing. It's the same soundtrack. Like, I cannot stress this enough. It's not even the meme, this is the same picture. It's literally the same. In fact, I'm going to give the hottest take I've ever given on this. Theme of Lore was almost note for note the Tommy Tallarico version.
Ooh.
All right.
Listeners, take a shot.
I was holding that one in. I'm like, do I bring this up?
Yeah.
I kind of have to now.
Yeah.
Like, this is the video game's live CD version.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is this here?
It's good. We like good remixes, but why is this here?
Why is this here? This is the only award nominee that makes me genuinely angry. Like, FF7 I can at least understand, even if I don't like it.
Exactly.
This one pisses me off. Because there's nothing transformative about it. At all.
Like, I'm not one to usually say, this game was robbed, this should have been here instead of this one. But here I'm salty enough about this pick to want to make an exception. Why is this here?
You know,
what is wrong with you?
What is wrong with you is a good question. This is the one entry on here that I'm just like, this was lazy. This was just lazy. This was a whole bunch of committee people who never even listened to the original soundtrack once. Otherwise, they would realize...
This is not a pick, this is a failure of knowledge.
Correct.
I feel like our comments on this pick alone might have been enough for listeners to fill their Music Arcade Rant bingo cards already.
I don't know how to respond to this. Like, as someone who played and loved the original Silent Hill 2, like... No, I know what this soundtrack sounds like, even if I don't know note for note. And the songs I do know note for note are the same songs, note for note.
Yes.
Even the few songs that I know, I noticed they are note for note. As the one I noted, Promise of the Forgotten, which is identical.
FF7, the argument for transformation is there. Even if I don't agree with it, the argument exists. It doesn't exist here.
Exactly. And now then, how about we take a nice breath of fresh air with a completely different and original soundtrack in Stellar Blade, and it really wants to be Nier Automata.
Yeah, we have Nier Automata at home, is what this soundtrack is.
Complete with some actual tracks composed by the arranger from Nier Replicant.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Like, they went into this going, let's make Nier again. Like, it's very clear that was Shift Up's goal with this game, and they didn't really back off from that. Like, there was this one really kind of lousy Gerard Butler movie I watched ages ago that was just Die Hard with the serial numbers filed off. But a funny thing happens when you fully rip off something really great is usually if you're willing to accept that it's a rip-off, you end up with something still pretty damn good. This is still pretty good. It's derivative.
Exactly.
But I don't hate it.
Like, to take an example of one of the tracks, the Hedgehog Brute theme, which I believe is a boss theme, it's fine, you get the heaviness of the antagonist, but not really the bits of lightness of the protagonist fighting it, which would have been a nice contrast underlined by, say, some piano notes that could respond to the heavy scenes. And so it's just something that understand what it's that knows what it wants to look at, knows what it wants to look like, but doesn't really have the level of mastery needed to make something stand out.
Yeah. I like what I heard, but the inspiration was on its sleeve, and it doesn't really do anything too special.
And I think I would have been nicer to this soundtrack and as a pick if the whole selection wasn't already that derivative. I think the FF7 Rebirth soundtrack is in part more original than the Stellar Blade soundtrack.
Well, we're definitely going to disagree on that regard. Because it's not like Stellar Blade is doing note for note anything compared to...
Yeah, no, it's not note for note, but I'm talking tone there. I'm talking originality.
No, I do get that. FF7 was at least deliberately remake something. This was just riffing on it. I understand.
When people meme higher fans when they see an Unreal Engine recreation of like Ocarina of Time, this is the end result.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm not like furious about this one. Like Silent Hill definitely gave me more of a headache than this ever would, but like...
Yeah, these are fine tracks, but...
Yeah.
You cannot help but look at it and see the shadow lurking behind.
Oh, yeah, no, 2B looms large over this, to the point where they flat out crossed over. And I don't know if we're getting that with the... I don't know if we're getting that DLC with the PC release, but it just came out on PlayStation.
Just two enormous moons casting a deep shadow over this soundtrack.
Ha! You're not entirely wrong. So... I guess the one thing that I will give this, that I kind of feel like gave it some kind of edge at the Game Awards, is that this is a Korean game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a rare sight that I'm fully willing to celebrate. It would be weird if an award show just nominated only American entries.
Well, technically that it still is not the case yet.
Oh, right.
Mostly because I know the Avatar Pandora
enough foreshadowing
Turkish.
For like 5 minutes in the future.
Yeah, very much foreshadowing. Yeah, like I don't love this list. I think that I probably would have replaced Silent Hill and Stellar Blade on this list. I do get why FF7's there. I don't like it, but I get why the committee went for it.
Yeah.
Astro Bot and Metaphor, I do believe, do deserve to be there for their artistic merits, but I would have definitely... Those last two are very questionable for me.
Yeah.
Overall, though, like, I'm not that furious about these picks. Like, it's your standard award show stuff. Like, I get it.
It's weird. It's like... Individually, each of the picks doesn't, besides the Silent Hill 2, doesn't really make me annoyed.
Right.
But together, I'm like, why is 80% of it here?
Yeah, together it just
and
feels...
yes, that is a precise percentage.
Yeah, they kind of paint a picture of let's play the greatest hits of gaming from the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That's the award
it's not
show.
daring, it's looking back, it's afraid.
I mean, it is, and that's pretty true of most award shows, but I look at the list, I definitely think, like, if it were me, Astro Bot and Metaphor would have still made the list. I think those two are at least creative and interesting enough that they deserve to be nominated for something like this.
Well, we know two of your possible picks for next show, then.
Neither of them are going to show up because I haven't played either of these games. just making that very clear now, and there's no way in hell... Even if I start playing Metaphor today, it's not going to be done by 2 weeks from now. Period. We both know
Definitely not. Yeah, that's 100+ hour run.
So...
Hell, by the time you finish it, if you start now, the re-release might come out.
Right?
At least it'll be announced.
Again, I hate that it sounds plausible.
Yeah.
We're only half joking. That's the worst part.
Prove us wrong, Atlas. Make us look like fools. I dare you.
Yeah, but if they do that, I'll never buy the game.
Yeah.
That's the problem. We're going to wait for something that never comes.
But I'll buy the next one at launch.
That's
I
fair.
can't wait for Metaphor unFantazio, which is completely different from the original game.
Now, yeah, I feel like this is a pretty, as I said, this is a pretty standard issue award ceremony stuff, right? Like, you have the safe picks, you have a couple of wacky ones, nothing too fancy, but nothing.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
These are video game award picks.
Yeah, they're a lot of brand recognition and some recognition of some wackier stuff. And I would actually include Stellar Blade in the wackier camp just because of its origins, even if the music itself is highly derivative. Like, they're recognizing the efforts of a Korean developer for, I think, the first time. And that is maybe a consolation, but at the same time, that in and of itself is noteworthy.
Exactly, and given that I'm a huge fan of the Grado Espada soundtrack, which was a Korean MMO with a very wide selection of tracks, including some Scandinavian metal for randomly one of the songs when you're exploring the highlands.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I like that they're getting to the forefront in that point. Also, the fact that it's a studio that I believe started with some gachas and then decided to just make full release games.
I think they're the same studio behind Nikkei.
Yeah, and I'm always happy when things move to this direction.
Absolutely.
Like, if you're going to make millions and millions on shaky gambling practices, at least let this dirty money fund some nice single-player or just self-sustaining buy it once and you're done experiences.
Yep.
Even if you have to be weird near fanboy about it.
I mean, if the thing is to be a fanboy of, like, I have a 2B and an A2 statue sitting over my little trophy case there.
And
so
I have 2 machine life forms in my shelf.
Yeah, it's like, if you're going to be a fanboy of something, an all-time classic is not the worst pick you could have made.
Yeah, especially since it's getting a bit on the ages, huh? 2017 release.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, how about we go for some other award ceremony and look at what the Grammys have picked.
Hello.
Oh.
The Grammys.
Yes.
The Grammys just got this one wrong.
Yes.
This is insulting.
Like, they literally got this wrong because from the 5 picks, 3 are from 2000. No, 2 are from 2023. 1 is from 2022, maybe 2023 if you're being generous about the part of the pick.
The Grammys suck. Like, we've talked about this a couple of times. They're bad at their job.
Yep.
Sure looks like it.
They're really bad here.
Yep. There are two words come to my mind, and they are rage and cringe.
Yeah.
I will say, though, the first pick is unexpected, but in an interesting way, at least.
You know, define first pick, because I actually you put this in you put this in reverse alphabetical order. I mean, it's a remake of a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah, but the tracks aren't remakes of the original soundtrack. I checked.
Okay, good. I didn't, but I kind of figured it would have been because that's definitely the Grammy speed. Okay.
I assumed so, and I wanted to see the difference, and so I did my due diligence and was pleasantly surprised, especially given we have had enough remade soundtracks already, so I just assumed this would be one, and turns out no. It's original tracks, and it's classic fantasy. It's a bit straightforward, but it's very much not unpleasant at all.
It's we got Skyrim at home.
I will note that we hear this sort of faux medieval gaming soundtrack very often, especially since Skyrim, but also especially since Hearthstone. But at least this sounds fun. This sounds neat.
I was unenthusiastic about it, but at least it's original compositions. That was the thing that I was unsure of, and Rana corrected me on that. So, I'm less angry than I used to be. I still think it is very generic and not the most interesting, but it's at least original. Yeah. I don't know who would have nominated this. I didn't even know this game existed.
Me neither, to be honest.
I saw it pass me by a little bit, but I never really paid much attention to it because I never got into Wizardry as a series, and
I played one on the PS3. It feels
like an old relic of the Amiga age.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. This is one that, as you said, started that, but actually got bought out by a Japanese developer. So that actually went to Japan, and they started releasing Wizardry titles. That was still very OG Amiga / DOS / ancient era of gaming.
Yeah, and my understanding is that they got a weirdly active following in Japan, which led to multiple remakes and a constant stream of reactualized, old style, tile by tile dungeon crawlers.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm just laughing at myself because we've touched on the Grammys suck, and we've touched on Big in Japan. Now this is a Thought in the Shadows bingo.
Oh no! Oh no!
Well, it's not Assassin's Creed Shadows, but turns out the composer worked on Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, apparently.
Cool.
I haven't played that one. That was on the PSP.
Yes.
It did get released on PC with the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster, but I haven't touched that one because AC3 is the least replayable AC game. By far.
I'm just gonna say, like, I look at what I'm seeing here, it's like, this is the first one where I'm scratching my head going, how in the heck did this get nominated? Because it's an obscure game from a franchise no one pays attention to that isn't that interesting. It's fine. It's a fine soundtrack. I'm not opposed to it, but I just don't understand. Like, this one just has me scratching my head.
The other picks, I'm annoyed at, but I understand them.
Yeah, there's some brand recognition there. This one's just like...
The
only explanation is that someone of the jury knows someone on the team of this game. Like, nepotism is literally the only way this makes sense.
The only other thing I can think of is nostalgia. Someone really liked Wizardry as a kid and went, oh, there's a Wizardry game, I'll nominate that, and no one thought to correct them.
I guess. Yeah, the weirdest part for me is that I could definitely see this in the Grammys and Stellar Blade in the Game Awards swapping places because Korean music is such a big thing for the Grammys in recent years. Like ever since BTS.
Stopping you right there. No way in hell. No, like, yeah, BTS, because they're one of the biggest names on the planet. They have no choice but to recognize them for popularity. That is not what's going on here at all. Stellar Blade was a hit, sure, but not the kind of hit the Grammys are ever going to look at.
Yes.
Like, that's the problem. The Grammys are still old men.
And at the heart of it, Stellar Blade is a profoundly otaku game.
Yeah. This is some nerd stuff. They're not going to nominate it. They wouldn't have nominated Nier. They might have.
What they did nominate it, however, was Star Wars Outlaws.
Hey, remember, that franchise that's really well known for having these huge themes and instantly memorable melodies, the most popular multimedia franchise on the planet? Whatever happened to that?
I actually stopped to check the soundtrack. There was one track I enjoyed, but the rest was We Have John Williams at Home.
I wasn't even getting that from this. I was just getting, this is just generic Garbo. I was not getting the Williams vibe at all from this.
It's very movie-like, and I don't mean that as a compliment.
I will say, it's definitely not near the quality of John Williams. But there were some cuts where I could recall Star Wars themes that they probably were basing their sound off.
It understands the Star Wars themes the way the Stellar Blade composers understand the Nier themes.
Again, I feel like you guys might be giving it too much credit because I'm just it feels like they were doing that for the Mandalorian soundtrack, not anything Williams related.
No, I would say the Mandalorian was much more of a departure and that I actually liked it.
Yeah,
I think
that's what I mean.
The point is that Star Wars Outlaws is drawing from Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like that at all.
I don't know what the heck it's actually trying to be. That was just my best guess, because this like, you guys are like, I hear
Maybe
Williams at this. I absolutely don't.
Maybe we just landed on different tracks. Admittedly, we had a little prep time for this one.
We only made the decision to cover the Grammys this morning, and I absolutely did sample the soundtrack, but I sampled like 10 songs.
And
Yeah, I checked like a half a dozen, to be honest.
yeah, same. And there were battle themes that were very Star Wars.mp3.
I must have missed those, I guess, because I didn't hear any of that. And I'm just sitting here like, this sounds like a weird fantasy western with some sci-fi elements, and not remotely Star Wars from anything I heard.
Yeah, the battle themes were definitely where I saw like, this is Diet John Williams.
Okay.
I did land on a track titled The Trailblazer, which sounded a bit more western-y-ish. So I think I kind of get where Gillen's coming from with his comparison to The Mandalorian. I haven't listened to the full Mandalorian soundtrack myself. I don't have Disney Plus, so I haven't watched the show. But from what I've heard of the soundtrack, I wouldn't necessarily say this is like Mandalorian.mp3 or something, but I can get where that idea is coming from. But yeah, this is
the main takeaway I have beyond the comparison points to previous Star Wars track is that it still feels like it's made for television instead of made for a video game. It doesn't send me into a place.
Yeah, this one is just this one's nominated entirely for brand recognition. This is Ubisoft plus Star Wars equals nomination. That's all that's happening here.
Wouldn't it be crazy if they did that twice?
Okay, I'm going to defend the next pick a little bit. Just a bit, but a little bit.
No, I mean the fact that we have 2 Ubisoft games in this 5.
Oh! Wait, what's the other one?
movie-related. Avatar.
Oh, I didn't realize that was Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's them too. But first, let's talk about Spider-Man 2 from 2023.
I thought this was fine. Like, yeah, again, it's Spider-Man, so it's getting a nomination, but also, like, as soundtracks go, it's a little lacking in energy, but at least there's something there.
Yes. Like, I browsed through a few tracks and saw absolutely nothing to excite me.
Yeah.
Like, if you name a track Midtown Madness, the last thing I want to hear is the most expected trailer-music.mp3 theme ever.
Yeah.
I want to hear some madness, and there wasn't much. I'm not saying it's not competent, but
yeah,
it feels like it belongs in a different kind of support.
I fully agree.
Yeah. A few months ago, during our Now Playing block, I mentioned I was playing the first Spider-Man, and that the soundtrack to that game felt quite a lot like we have Danny Elfman's score at home for the first 3 Spider-Man movie. This one isn't quite to that level. I won't say it's that derivative. There is still a bit of that, but at least the action pieces are not as Danny Elfman-esque. But that isn't to say it's particularly interesting to listen to either.
This soundtrack pick is the soundtrack of someone who then writes an article about video games, starting with "Video games have come a long way since Pac-Man."
True. I don't know. I'm less angry about this one than some of these picks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I wouldn't have nominated this. This is fine. It exists.
Yeah, like
Still
I
from
wouldn't say
2023.
I wouldn't say it deserves nomination, but I can see this as like your regular Grammy safe pick.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is.
That's the Astro Bot pick, except more cowardly. Or more... Cowardly is not the right word. Maybe more like blinded by the lights. It's the pick of someone who looks at what's the biggest, showiest production and nominates it.
Right.
a couple of years before this would have been a Cyberpunk 2077 pick.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we have God of War Ragnarok Valhalla 2022.
They just wanted to nominate
thought-
Bear McCreary. That's all that happened here. They just wanted to nominate Bear McCreary.
I have so many thoughts.
Which they could have done with Astro Bot.
Was he in that soundtrack? I didn't even see. Okay.
He's certainly listed in there.
I'm
Maybe he didn't compose anything, but it's just because of the 2 tracks that take and remix God of War music.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I listen to this, and I hear nothing, really. I hear basically the same soundtrack we got, 5 songs of it, and 2 of the songs I listened to were just riffs on Gerard Moreno's work.
Honestly, that the Gerard Moreno thing is kind of the one positive thing I have to say here, because I know what the themes of this DLC were about. So that actually works really well with the themes of the DLC.
What are they about Valhalla?
However,
My point is, it's not original compositions, again, but this time almost worse, question mark?
yeah, we have that issue. We have the issue that this wasn't even like a DLC you buy or whatever. This was a free update. And it was a free roguelite update to a mostly linear original game. When those happen, as seen with when Assassin's Creed Valhalla got its roguelite update, is not exactly a huge DLC-sized update, as noted by the soundtrack being an EP with 5 songs.
Yeah.
Please, Eddie, tell me the roguelite update to Assassin's Creed Valhalla was named Ragnarok. This would be so funny.
It wasn't, but they did have a DLC titled Dawn of Ragnarok.
Close enough.
Close enough. This one makes me very angry. This is the laziest possible pick you could have had.
Yeah.
I enjoy Bear McCreary's work, but
this is the pick of someone that knows free video games because they've seen the ads on billboards.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I enjoy Bear McCreary's work, especially when he gets to be creative.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when he used taiko drums for the Godzilla soundtrack.
He's great.
And he's amazing. But, like, why are we rewarding in this way? Like, I don't mean to say we shouldn't reward these kinds of updates, but why are we rewarding at this level a free update that adds 5 songs?
I mean, again, this is just a matter of the committee not knowing what they're doing. Like, there was a big issue with, I think, a Best Supporting Actress Emmy that came up, where you basically had a name come up for like 30-something seconds in one episode of something because they happened to be in the area that day and thought it'd be funny to film it and ended up clocking a nomination based on name recognition alone. Nobody took this seriously and everyone was angry about this. I think this is a similar situation there. No one knew what to pick, so they picked this. Yeah, new God of War game. That's famous. Let's pick that one and make the kids happy. I think that was what was going through their heads.
And let's be honest, if the soundtrack to this update is the greatest soundtrack of the year, then there is no video game that released or something.
Yeah, everything about this just screams just lazy nomination for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Just as an aside for the gag, Rana asked about the Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLC. Wanna guess who won the Grammy Best Video Game Soundtrack of 2023?
I'm going to guess Bear McCreary for God of War.
No, it was Stephanie Economou for Assassin's Creed Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok.
Oh, wow, okay.
Incredible. So I guess they have a Scandinavian mythology quota?
Maybe.
They apparently do.
At least Dawn of Ragnarok is like a full-sized expansion to the game.
I'm just imagining a board of like five jury in a room, 4 of them in suits, and the last one that's in full Viking costume going, we should nominate this game.
To
I don't know, I just get a-
Valhalla.
That
And I just get a good feeling for it.
that's a great image. I like it.
No, I don't even imagine like the conversation. I imagine the four guys just talking amongst themselves. Then this Viking enters, drops the game on the table. To Valhalla. And for those
This is where
wondering,
we at. We are making Grammy jury fan fiction.
yeah, we kind of are. And to those familiar with the quote, yes, the trailer to The Northman is still in my mind years later.
Fair.
It is a great quote, by the way, because the dude yelling to Valhalla, that's a great delivery.
You know what absolutely isn't in my mind space at any time of the year ever, despite repeated attempts to make it a big deal?
Gee,
Avatar.
I wonder where
Yeah.
we're going with this. Yeah.
My interest in this
Yeah.
comes from the composer, Turkish composer Pinar Toprak, who we've talked about on the show before because she composed 99 Nights, a not great but still memorable Xbox 360 Dynasty Warriors clone from Konami. I liked that soundtrack. This is fine.
Yeah.
It's probably the
like-
most creative of their entries, I'll give it that. That doesn't say much. That bar is very low, but
2023 game again, but like I didn't dislike what I heard. It
Yeah.
didn't feel quite as movie-like as the other. It felt very hard to distinguish some of the tracks from each other.
yeah.
It's kind of funny that this
But
didn't.
that's the biggest problem I can fault that soundtrack for.
It's kind of funny that this didn't sound as much as a movie soundtrack when the composer made the soundtrack to the Captain Marvel movie. She is a.
I forgot
a
she
movie,
did that.
She's a movie
Yeah, well,
and
she
series
also
composer,
made-
mainly.
But she has dabbled in
she
games
also
before.
made-
We just
Yeah.
discussed that, so...
And,
Yeah.
and even if
She
even
also
if
made
she wasn't
the
like,
score for the
even
Paw Patrol movie,
yeah,
so
even if she wasn't a
People go
video game
places.
composer, doesn't mean she would be bad at video game music. It's just the irony of the situation is all I'm pointing at.
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, to me, like the game itself, it looked great. The gameplay sounds like something that would be right up my personal alley as someone who likes exploration adventure games. But the soundtrack, like it
And me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, Ubisoft game. I know exactly what happens.
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, pretty much.
I
But yeah, this
I
is,
have no opinion on this, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, like this big, besides the fact that it's a game from 2023 again, doesn't make me angry.
Yeah, the only things I have on my notes for this is that it's not quite as generic as the movie soundtrack for Avatar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it adds a little bit of a touch of We Have a Horizon at Home, which is fine. Like
It's less offensive than any of the other picks, I think.
Exactly.
this
I mean, besides Wizardry, which isn't offensive, it's just weird.
That's fair.
Wizardry is weird and in a way kind of neat that they did nominate a deep cut like that.
Yeah.
This one, like
Like,
in a better.
they really went for a game that came out of nowhere and 4 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
and like, if the Grammys were a better institution, I could definitely see like Avatar Frontiers of Pandora as the safe option, and we get some more wacky stuff. But
That's a big if, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah, I
it's
think
a
if there's
huge-
one thing this deeply out of touch list has shown is that the Grammys have no idea what makes a good video game soundtrack.
yeah, they have 4 safe picks and then Wizardry.
Yeah. Which is, again, just weird.
Yeah.
Like, I would take anything from the VGAs, even Silent Hill 2, over anything listed here.
This is baffling.
It really is. It's just so out of touch.
Yeah.
It's just so, like... How?
and I still can't get over, like, just because it was either just because it was God of War or just because it was Bear McCreary, they nominated a 5-song EP at the same level as full soundtrack.
Yeah,
They don't do
they
that
did
for-
not listen to this.
Yeah, they don't do this for any other category.
No. I'm so annoyed by this.
I have a weird take now.
Go for it.
To cross over the two peaks, like, there's a certain brand of discourse that happens pretty regularly, and that is essentially the simple video games used to be good and now they're trash. The people that utter that kind of discourse first always refer to when video games used to be good as generally their own childhood to teen years.
Sure.
And they have these takes because they just aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
These are the picks of people that aren't really paying attention.
No, absolutely not.
Like, from these 10 games, the only one whose soundtrack is making me excited to discover it is Metaphor ReFantazio.
I would also say Astro Bot personally, but that's just because it's wacky. Its composition is wacky, was what I was trying to say in failing. Like, there's some creativity there that I think deserves recognition, but yeah, no, generally speaking, 2 out of 10 is not a great ratio.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to play. I don't want to play the sort of I am a Destiny player. Let's put Destiny into this. But like, the final shape came out, and it had. If you want to have a full cinematic soundtrack, like, of course, sure, video games have full cinematic soundtracks sometimes. Let's nominate one as an example. Let's say you want to do that as an example.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not do?
That's what you'd pick if you'd pay attention.
Yeah, like, everyone who follows the game loved the soundtrack to death because, yes, it had all those callbacks to previous moments and stuff, but it also felt.
Shame they fired the composer, didn't they?
Yes, they did. The main composer is retired now. But
right.
Some of the others probably aren't. But yeah, I won't defend Bungie. Let that be clear. I'm not the guy who defends Bungie, even though I like Destiny.
That's why we still respect you as a friend.
Yep.
That's why I haven't been kicked off the podcast yet. But like, of these 10 picks, a solid half of them are just, this is cinematic music for video games. Why not pick one that actually was made for the game and with a specific and unique view of the game as its own form of art, rather than, oh, this is Star Wars, oh, this is Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm less disappointed by the Game Awards than I am at the Grammys. The Grammys are just hot garbage to the extreme. The Game Awards, with one exception, 4 of those I can see how they got on this list.
Like, if anything, I'm almost sad for Wizardry that it got nominated by that award show.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's almost an indictment.
Exactly.
Like, as I said, I look at these, and while I don't agree with many of the picks, I'm willing to hear arguments in their favor. It's not like I'm angry at any of them except Silent Hill.
Yes.
The Grammys are just garbage.
The way I see it, at least this year, between the Game Awards and the Grammys with the video game soundtrack picks, is that the Game Awards were safe picks by people who they do sort of live the video game world, let's say, but they might not necessarily follow every new release, while the Grammy Awards were just folks in suits and ties who are going, what are the kids into these days? And maybe a random Viking in the room, who knows?
Yeah, the Game Awards look upon the throne of the AAAs and condescend a little pity pick for the indies. the Grammys look to the left completely outside of the area and picks their nose.
They're throwing darts at a wall.
You know, it occurs to me, and this only just occurred to me now. You know what very surprisingly didn't get nominated despite me not liking the soundtrack? Neither of these recognized Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think that would be the safest of safe picks for either of these institutions. In fact, am I crazy or did Nintendo get shut out completely?
I haven't checked.
From those picks, it certainly did.
Yeah, from these, they got shut down. They also aren't present in the Game Awards Game of the Year nominees, which...
They are present in other categories for sure.
No Tears of the Kingdom, no Mario Wonder, no, not even Echoes of Wisdom. None of these really safe franchises from Nintendo got looked at.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're as fed up with Nintendo as we are. Transition!
Oh boy.
Okay, I didn't actually see it coming, weirdly enough.
I kind of saw it coming. I was just weirded out that it wasn't coming from Rana, who's the one who does the segues.
Sometimes I have a good one, and I just had to go for it.
Honestly, as the segue guy, blindsided me, perfect fit, 10 out of 10 segue.
10 out of 10, no notes.
Game recognizes game.
Thank you.
Now then, the Nintendo app, as the one who among us three has downloaded it,
Yep.
At least had it downloaded at some point, I removed it since then. Here's what happened. I saw the announcement that Nintendo is releasing the Nintendo Music app.
Right.
They are doing that instead of, one might say, making their video game music accessible through other media, but if the app has some nice features, sure. This is weird, but this is Nintendo weird. This is not offensive weird to me.
Yet. We get there.
So, but I had a worry when I looked at the announcement. Some of the features described looked nice, but there was something I didn't see, and so I had to check for myself. I downloaded the app. I picked one random track. I think it was a Splatoon one. This was on the front page. Checked. Okay, this comes from Splatoon. This is the name of the track. You can loop it. You can, if you really dig, search the copyright information for the associated copyright, which is just Nintendo every single time. Notice something that's missing? The composer, or the vocals, or any human person involved in making those soundtracks happen. Completely missing. Unavailable.
Sucks.
Yes.
This sucks a lot.
Especially within the current context of artists being removed and hidden so that people with no understanding of what it takes to make art are putting more and more pressure to put a false equivalency of genuine artistic work and pungled automated recreations and plagiarism.
This?
Artists make art, whether it's music or illustrations or video. It comes from people. People you cannot remove from the equation.
This is one of the things that has me just downright furious with Nintendo this last year. I remember... Eddie, at one point we were talking about potential, drinking games / chat memes. And you brought up Nintendo as a possibility. I had to knock it down because it was Nintendo, we talk about them so much because they keep being newsworthy in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
They keep coming up with new and horrible things to make me angry with.
And given... maybe it's just me influenced by some of the contents I've consumed recently when it comes to YouTube video content in particular, but I'm worried that this might get worse in the coming year not even because of the release of the next console, but because of a slowly escalating beef with Sony.
They have their escalating beef with Sony. They have their extreme litigiousness towards both users and now another company.
No, that's part of the Sony beef too.
Oh, that's actually... It looked like that was separate. They're just trying to kill the deal with Sony? That's their plan?
Sony is a shareholder in Pocket Pair, if that's what you were talking about.
Oh, I didn't realize they were a shareholder.
Yeah.
I know that Sony had a merchandising deal with them, but that seemed like it was separate from actual game development.
It was a weird deal because it was under, I believe, Sony Music.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just...
Also, Mario and Luigi Brothership, the development studio, not a Nintendo internal. It's a studio that...
Octopath team?
No, I believe it's someone else. I don't remember the name, but I do remember who owns them, and that is Kadokawa.
Who Sony's now trying to buy.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's why I'm putting the escalating beef on the forefront there.
Okay, there was some behind-the-scenes details that I was not aware of. I'm still very angry at Nintendo, but now I'm like, we haven't quite reached tortious interference, but this is edging a lot closer to that.
Yeah. Like, we have moved a couple of clocks on the big video game company's DEFCON.
I mean, given that AAA has not really been the home for good games in a long time, I almost feel like if Nintendo and Sony blow each other up, that might almost be good for the gaming scene. And I know that is a deeply cynical take, because there's a lot of good people who work for both of those companies, but like...
Of course.
I would cry for Destiny, because Sony kind of owns Bungie right now, but beyond that, you're not wrong.
I mean, we'd lose a lot of good things. Like, I'd lose out on Horizon. I'd lose out on... Bloodborne would never, ever get a remake. Like, if these two companies did eradicate each other, we'd be in a bad way.
When they will release their next console, it will be barely obsolete, which is a plus compared to the Switch.
Barely obsolete. That's great. Yeah, no, I have already pledged to never... use Nintendo hardware ever again. I will still buy games for it, and I will just emulate them, because I'm not dealing with their garbo. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Especially how litigious they are. It's gotten so bad. And they have flat out said in court they believe that people do not have the right to archive anything. And I'm like,
yes,
you're terrible. That is terrible. That thing you just said, that's actually terrible.
Like, the only company I'm more angry at for the same reason is Hachette.
I don't know who that is.
The company that sued the Internet Archive.
Oh, those morons. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
They're one of the big four book publishers, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This thing over digital libraries and then being offended that exists.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, no, that.
Because they're the kind of ghouls that would close down libraries as a concept if they could.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, that's
and
just...
honestly, like, we had a few years where it felt like it was getting a bit better. Or at least it wasn't degrading, but this year, things on the litigious front, on the people being randomly DMCA'd front, I feel like it's escalated this year.
I would say that it isn't even like just the Sony thing. I think with Nintendo...
no, I'm not talking about it as just a Sony thing or just a Nintendo thing.
With Nintendo, I think it's like it goes beyond their hatred for Sony, and I think it goes beyond them being overprotective of their IPs. At this point, I think comes down to...
And let's be clear, by the way. Let's be clear. Microsoft is only trying to look like the good guy comparison because they have bigger fish to fry at the moment and they need to look pristine and they are failing.
Yeah.
But they're trying to fail not that much.
No, I've lost so much respect for Nintendo as a company, which sucks because a good friend of mine works on their server team. And I'm just like, I hate that I have to keep talking crap about my friend's employer, but also like, this isn't okay what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, they're putting out great games. I really want to play Echoes of Wisdom. I'm going to at some point. This isn't okay.
I'm interested in Echo of Wisdom. I
mean, for years I've mentioned how I haven't owned a console since the PS2, but Nintendo has always been the one company whose consoles are unique enough that I actually give it a thought. But, like, their attitude nowadays are so not even anti-consumer, but also anti-fans. They don't.
Yeah, it's anti-player.
Yeah, they don't like. It's not even them not liking new fan games or new mods. It's them straight up not liking fan self-enforced challenge runs.
Yeah.
They want people to play exactly the way they want it to be played, and they want to screw up with Sony while at it if possible.
This is such a minor thing, but this goes right into their mentality. So in Majora's Mask, there is a skip you could do in Pirate's Fortress with Goron roll.
Yeah.
In the 3D remake, they put a pole at that skip just to prevent that skip. Something that only speedrunners do. No casual's ever going to try this.
Yeah.
They did that just to spite speedrunners. There's no other reason for that pole to be there now.
And as an aside, I think by this point, if you've been following our podcast since the start, you probably know how much I personally enjoy player agency and the ability to customize your experience, which is why I enjoy Skyrim and Baldur's Gate 3, because I can customize with mods and I can play my own way and roleplay as my own character. Let's say I were to buy a Switch 2 or whatever. I do not have a guarantee anymore that 2 weeks later Nintendo won't patch out something that I enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly.
And the risk becomes even higher when it comes to live service games.
Yeah.
Something Nintendo hasn't actively done. If anything, they did a thing that didn't need to be as good as it was when they made the end of service plan for Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, where they released an offline version that's just buy it and you have it.
I like that. I will say they did right there.
Yeah.
I've been very open about that.
Yeah, exactly. And we'd love more example of that kind of stuff that lets people keep at it with their games.
Yeah.
The fact that they've already announced that there will be a library transfer to the next console. Good. We don't want to need to put caveats and but remember this and but remember that each and every time. It's tiring.
It is.
And again, it's not just those three. It's other companies too. One example that comes to my mind, that's a callback to a time when the company was that much worse, is Sega. Sega released Sonic and Shadow Generations, which is a bundle pack of a new Shadow Generations game and Sonic Generations. I didn't know that was the case, but apparently they were very worried that people would look at Sonic Generations and confuse it for Sonic and Shadow Generations. So what did they do? They delisted Sonic Generations from all platforms. This is a callback to a time where I believe it was maybe a Breath of Fire game? No, that wouldn't be Breath of Fire, but one of the RPG franchises they had a hand on. They did a huge series of DMCA strike barrage just in order to clear up the search algorithm for the new game, which was made.
Ooh.
And that's not the kind of attitude that's going to make me look at the game your company is making. That's the kind of attitude that's going to make me want to look anywhere else. And it's not like there's nowhere else to look at. Indies continue to make bangers after bangers after bangers to the point where the gameplay driven success is making people think it's a bit too much. But like, in that kind of context, how could you not look at Balatro being nominated in 7 different categories or something, and it's like, okay, maybe there are alternatives at least.
Yeah. I don't know. It just makes me sad.
They are.
I
Just makes me.
I do want to real quick just go back to the actual Nintendo Music app, because we already talked about the main negative aspects of it. I want to talk about some other negative aspects that are more consumer oriented. So if someone is listening to this podcast and maybe they just love these old songs so much they are still considering getting the app, these are some other things you need to be aware of. So first of all, it's only available through phones. You cannot get it on PCs. So if you're planning on listening to that music in the background while you're working, tough luck. You need a Nintendo Switch Online subscription to listen to the music. So if you don't own a Switch or you're not into the online services, tough luck.
That I'm not too surprised about, honestly, given that it's a way for them to add value to their online service, which I've desperately wanted to do for a while.
That one I'm not pointing as, like, look at Nintendo being evil, but it's a consumer thing.
It is annoying from a consumer standpoint, yeah, sure.
I'd rather they add useless things to the bundle that raise the bundle's price for no reason, even though one prepares the other.
Yeah. I absolutely would rather something that gives more people access as opposed to something more exclusive but monetizable. But I at least understand Nintendo's thinking on this one. I get it.
Yeah, like I get it, but I'm annoyed, but I get it. Let's put it that way. But it's just information I feel like it's worth sharing for people who still think they might want this. In my opinion, trust me, you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not committing a cardinal sin if you get in the app or anything. It's just...
Yeah, like, I'm not gonna gatekeep.
No, it turns out I only removed the shortcut. I didn't even have the app deleted. Well, no, that's the case.
That won't last for long. But yeah, like, I'm... As I've grown older, I've grown more chill. I'm the kind of guy who goes, I'm not gonna gatekeep you. If you wanna do the thing that I think is garbage, go do it. I'll try to warn you, but go do it. But yeah, this is, like, in my opinion, you don't want the Nintendo Music app.
Yeah, just listen to the music on YouTube on somebody that hasn't been smacked by a takedown notice yet.
I hope we don't eventually get to a world where everyone has been taken down by a DMCA by Nintendo. Because that would force us to use the app.
And until that risk's happening, look at ways to get files on your computer.
Yeah.
Things that are locally stored.
I still buy CDs for exactly this reason, because I can always rip them.
Yeah.
You can get fan remixes on Bandcamp.
And there are ways, like, a lot of people have done a lot of work in archiving things and making them available in ways that are not intended, perhaps, but that are important and more important as games become lost in time and music becomes lost in time and artistry becomes lost in time, like that. And you have to find ways to go around if you don't want to stay hostage to companies that would burn their own history for optimizing search results. Anyway, what should we be playing this week?
Music Arcade, now playing. Send help. Alright, so
I think that is one of the most brutal non-segue transitions.
That one was pretty good.
That was a broken man just asking for help. Like, I kind of wanted to edit that to add like the Morse code for SOS in the background, as if you're tapping on your desk.
3 longs, 3 shorts, 3 longs.
So we're sort of a Vampire Survivors addiction help group right now, right?
Not for me. I finished the DLC. I actually unlocked everyone, so I'm good there.
Yeah, it turns out Vampire Survivors stays a game with the trappings of an endless loop gacha addictive game, but it has an actual end and a cheap price. And also uses the money they're making to bankroll some of the best remixes there is around.
They got Vittorio D'Amore, a.k.a. Keygen Church, a.k.a. the dude Eddie introduced me to and has become one of my favorite artists in the meantime since, to the point where I put off eye surgery and flew out to Los Angeles to see his very first U.S. tour as Master Boot Record.
That might be my greatest achievement in life.
They got him to remix a bunch of tracks, many of which from Curse of Darkness, a game that I find very underrated, but a soundtrack that is out of this world good.
Overall, like, we've talked about people that only have a cursory knowledge of video games and still take an expertise position. This is the exact opposite. This is passion with deeper cut than I thought possible. Like, there is no question the people involved in this are bigger Castlevania fans than I will ever be.
Correct.
And I've played this game since they were on the NES.
Uh-huh.
I do also want to shout out the remixes done by Evelyn Lark, aka the Noble Demon, because personally I absolutely loved every single one of her remixes on the soundtrack.
Clearly so much love went into this soundtrack.
Yeah,
to everything.
It's so good.
And this expansion content as well.
And
like, in general.
I've talked about this once or twice. I'm going to talk about the Curse of Darkness thing for a second. I'd played Lament of Innocence and liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Curse of Darkness came out, I said, yeah, sure. I think I bought it. I think I even bought it in a used bin. And I popped into my PlayStation 2, and we get to the first level, and Abandoned Castle starts playing, and I was blown away. This is one of those songs that just hit me like a truck instantly, and I'm like, oh, this soundtrack is going to be good, huh? Yeah. So when I was playing through this, all of a sudden, Keygen Church's version of Abandoned Castle comes up and hits me the exact same way, and I'm like, oh, we're doing this, huh?
Yeah. And what's crazy is that the remixes of absolute bangers that are very active are obviously good. The remixes of calm, contemplative songs are amazing.
There's a Saraband of Healing remix.
How did they...
There's a Woodcut Partita remix.
They made Lost Painting
and that's not even my
as an
favorite.
action-packed song.
Yeah!
Wandering the Crystal Blue is my favorite track of the entire soundtrack.
It's all so good. Everyone here really cared about this.
Yes.
And like, to take a step away from the music specifically just a bit, they got Neil Newbon to voice Dracula, aka award-winning actor for Baldur's Gate 3. He won a BAFTA.
They also got Sung-Won Cho in there.
Yes.
For specifically the vampire in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes.
Ha.
Vampire Spawn, same difference. But and Sung-Won Cho, like, huge talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
this all started as, again, Vampire Survivors was a dude making a game for fun between, I think, him and a friend, with just all of the jokes about Castlevania. And now Castlevania came knocking on their door, offering more.
Yeah, everyone was kind of surprised by the crossover with Contra. It's increasingly clear to me that crossover was a prelude to see if Ponkel and Konami could work together.
I think there's two ways.
Either that or the greatest setup to a joke punchline.
Yeah,
that
that's
be.
what I was gonna say. It was either a test to see if they could work together, or the greatest joke ever of, oh no, we're definitely not gonna do Castlevania. Here's Dracula for you.
I mean, there's no vampire in our game.
They ended that joke. There's now several vampires and Vampire Survivors.
I was gonna say
there's a squadron of them
now.
There's several. If they say immune to health drain, they are a vampire. So we have Dracula, Elizabeth, Soma, sort of.
With the exception, I believe Shanoa is immune to health drain, but isn't a vampire.
I don't recall that being on her list, but I haven't played as her in a while. I use her weapon a bunch, but she only got one attempt from me. Once I got her stuff done, I kind of moved on. Unfortunately, this DLC really did encourage play a character until you unlock the next thing and then move on.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of characters to play.
There are a lot of characters. There are 2 rounds of additional characters.
I mean, they said the expansion content is about 80% of the entire content's worth of Vampire Survivor at launch. At 1.0 launch, not early access launch, to be clear.
I think that's about right. Probably more than, honestly, just given the number of characters.
Yeah, I think my best, the best part in the announcement for me was the actual Steam post, where they were talking, oh, we're gonna have 30 plus characters. We're gonna have 40 plus new songs. And then at the end,
that plus is doing a lot of work.
Not only that, but at the end, there's the frequently asked questions, and one of them was, are you lying about the content of a DLC again? Us? No, never. Sure. Technically, you weren't lying.
Also, the last question of that FAQ was, so are there going to be vampires? Like, surely there's going to be vampires. And the response was, I don't know, they don't tell me anything. Basically, I'm just the intern here.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Ode to Castlevania is a major bright spot in my life right now. Like, that puts so much happiness out in the world. I'm glad it exists.
Also, a reminder that the lore master that also worked for the lore for the Castlevania creatures, and if you haven't checked the bestiary descriptions, you really should, is Jam Stephanie Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
And she is famous for having, at a time, on her weekly in gaming industry news show, a specific section dedicated to criticizing Konami for whatever boneheaded decisions they've made lately, and the section has a title I cannot repeat on this podcast. I have a t-shirt of that too.
You'll have to show me the t-shirt at some point.
In any case, before we get too lost in Vampire Survivors admiration, there is another game we have all 3 of us played a significant amount, and that is Age of Wonder 4.
I wouldn't necessarily say a significant amount for me. I'm like halfway through my second campaign ever, but like...
I think I've played 4 campaigns, maybe 5.
Well, you've played more than the both of us united.
It's a funny thing, because like Age of Wonders as a franchise was never on my radar. But a while back, when I think it was a couple weeks away from the game launching, the soundtrack came out, and Rana DM'd me saying, "I think you're gonna like this one." I checked a couple songs. I went, "Oh, no, the second song on the soundtrack. This sounds very folky." Rana went, "Yep, that's what I thought of you."
Yep.
And yeah,
I assume complete responsibility for that.
And that was the first non-rhythm game to be added to my Steam wishlist based on the soundtrack alone. And but yeah, so that was added to my wishlist. Spent months there because it's a bit of an expensive game for Brazilians, especially since it's a Paradox game, so you know it's gonna have DLCs, and it does have DLCs. But then they had a free weekend this year, and I couldn't say no when I found myself in a weekend where I didn't have any work from my post-grad course yet to do, so I was free, and the game was free, and I started playing on a Saturday when I realized it was a Sunday and I had wasted 10 hours in the game, and I went, yep, that's a sign.
Sounds about right.
My discovery of the game, so to speak, was a bit different, though it's very usual for me this year in particular. I saw Potato play it a few times, and I'm like, this looks pretty cool. I could have fun with this. Am I really doing the 4X thing now? And then the US election happened, and I was disappointed with the results and decided I need something fun to play and to take my mind off of this. And,
not a bad pick.
yeah, I saw this. It was on sale. I could get the entire game and all the expansions for $100, and I'm like, I'm gonna get $100 worth of enjoyment out of this. I know it. Sure. So I bought it. And I've been enjoying it. I'm not as good as I wish I was yet, but, like, it's cheaper than frickin', what do you call it? It's cheaper than Stellaris.
Yeah. And more accessible as well. Like,
yeah,
a lot of the content packs they've added width and, in a way, replayability.
Yeah.
More than complexity.
Yeah,
which I think is a nice compromise. Like, none of the DLC really feel mandatory for first playthrough, especially.
Yeah. Also, I will say this, I found the music to be underwhelming, but I haven't been paying as much attention to it, and I'll give it more of a listen since, Eddie, you're such a fan of it, so.
Yeah, I listed on my notes as basically being Rise of Nations meets folk music, which means Rana knew exactly who to show this game to.
Yeah, that's much more your jam than mine. That's just not.
That's a U-shaped hole.
Honestly,
if I ever saw
it's not even just the soundtrack, because the game itself, I won't go too in depth into the gameplay, but just quick note, it's a strategy game. I grew up playing strategy games. I just talked about how I value player agency video games and how I like to roleplay in Skyrim and Baldur's Gate 3.
And this game really allows you to roleplay.
This is somehow a strategy game where you can just roleplay your magical wizard or your dragon or whatever you want, and your choices in research will still be viable in some way. They might not be optimal, and they might not work at the hardest difficulty, but if you're playing on easy or normal, it will still work.
I'm playing people that aren't evil. They just know each and every one of them that they're better than everybody else. And it's a shame they don't realize it.
My first campaign was Big Dragon Dude. That was a lot of fun. Actually, a good guy, Big Dragon Dude. My second playthrough leans more good, but is more about, like, expanding knowledge and very arcane focused. Also very summoner focused. Like, there's a lot of summon spells going on. So, that's been a lot of fun. They've been two very different playstyles.
Yeah, that's the thing that's fun. Like, I haven't seen factions feel as different since the Endless... I think it's just Endless Legend, which had insanely different factions.
Legend had,
overwhelmingly so.
Endless Legend had a faction where you could only have your capital city. Everything else, you couldn't settle, and you couldn't absorb other faction cities. You had to destroy.
And then there's another that had no cities, and you just were nomadic people.
I think that was on a DLC. I don't remember.
No, I think it's one of the original 8 ones.
But yeah, this I want to say like the level of variety isn't quite to the level of Endless Legend, but you can create your custom faction and customize with a lot of traits. So you can...
And it feels more palatable because there's a lot of Heroes of Might and Magic DNA in there.
There is a lot of Heroes of Might and Magic DNA.
I would say like the world building is halfway between Heroes of Might and Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, and given what Ubisoft did to Heroes of Might and Magic, I'm glad somebody is taking charge.
Yeah!
Although they are releasing a new game soon, and it's so much a callback to Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and 3, it's literally called Heroes of Might and Magic The Olden Days.
That's hilarious. It's probably going to have Denuvo in it because it's Ubisoft, but that's hilarious.
Yes.
That couldn't be more on the nose if they tried.
Absolutely. Now then, to continue with my personal no-playing, speaking about games that are not afraid to be on the nose, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. It's amazing. I love it. I love the gameplay. I love dying and retrain boss fights for an entire hour because I'm playing on hard mode and having a great time all throughout. It's dynamic. It's incredibly cheesy. It's straightforward. The music is great. The gameplay is great. The visuals are great, and I love every one of them.
Yeah, it's got some Souls-like DNA from what I understand, correct?
It is a Souls-like,
okay.
Yes. It's made by the Nioh team.
Okay.
And Nioh was one of my favorite Souls-like. It's between Nioh and Code Vein.
I gave up on Souls-likes ages ago, got dragged into it on a pick-a-game, and then lost touch with the guy I was playing with. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good not playing Code Vein anymore. I'm not enjoying this franchise. I'm not enjoying this style of gameplay. And then suddenly, very recently, and we'll talk about this on mine, I played a game that has a shocking amount of Souls-like DNA in it, despite never ever supposed to be a Souls-like. And I'm like, oh, I guess I can play this now.
Well, that's great, because as my description so far has hinted at it, I really like this game. And I think more people should play it and know of it beyond its original trailer, which was probably one of the funniest big summer game show thing moments of recent years. Just a single trailer with I must kill chaos again and again. But when it comes to other games I've played, plenty of games I've played a few times, especially given that we haven't had an episode for like a month or so. But of the two most noteworthy recent entries, I've been replaying a fair bit of RoboQuest because of the Endless update they added. I haven't tried the Endless mode yet because I need more ranches to unlock it, and I just enjoy doing a few runs every now and then. Still a wonderful little fast-paced wonder treasure of a game. And then the last spell. No particular reason why I've been playing it, I just felt like something I can take turn-by-turn action at it, and this was the one for the right moment. And I'm also having a lot of fun. And soundtrack for both of those games is still fantastic, so
sure,
I'm having good stuff in my ears. And what have you been playing?
Eddie, you first.
Whomsoever it might concern.
Honestly, the only other thing I'm playing that isn't in our shared collective picks has been Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which
interesting.
I grew up with Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and I think I play a little bit of 2 as well on the PS2. When they announced this, I was like, okay, my child self is gonna love this. Let's wish list instantly.
This one just looks like a whole lot of Dragon Ball.
It is. Honestly, if anything, I'm kind of sad it's not more Dragon Ball in that
There's more Dragon Ball?
they actually tried to balance things a little bit, not to the same level as Dragon Ball Fighters, which was a fully balanced game developed by Arc System Works. This one is not to that level of balance, but they did try to balance a little bit for competitive play. I kind of wish it was more over the top, like if you could just drop in as like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and smack Krillin till he's a pulp, that would be lovely. But no, they chose a slightly balanced path, which is a bit of a shame for people like me who just play single player. But I from what I've seen, people who play multiplayer have actually been enjoying it as well.
Good for them, especially since there hasn't really been a lot of arena fighters like that recently.
Yeah.
Not in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's kind of been a while, come to think of it. And this one is fairly, when it comes to the arenas themselves, it is fairly over the top. You destroy everything just by flying around. But it's loads of fun. The soundtrack, last time I brought up a Dragon Ball game, it was Super Dragon Ball Heroes, which was the card game. That one had a very generic soundtrack. I just kind of muted the soundtrack and left YouTube on another screen. This one isn't to the same level. It does have anime music packs, DLCs, because I guess every Castlevania, every Dragon Ball game apparently has to have those now. But no one likes those on this game because the tracks they chose don't match with like the vibe of a fight. It's like the opening themes, the closing themes, some.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It's some weird pick. But the basic soundtrack, it's miles ahead of Super Dragon Ball Heroes. I'll say that much. It has some cool guitars here and there. I wouldn't say it's like an amazing soundtrack, but it works for a fighting game. And that's basically been it for me.
Alright, Galen, what have you been up to?
Well, let's start with the usual. Arknights.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh really? So, there's been a bunch that's happened since the last time I talked about this, but the two big ones are the Lone Trail rerun, Lone Trail remaining one of my favorite soundtracks of any event, composed by Stephen Grove, who's awesome. And we got Chapter 14, which features a side mode that has, like, one of the coolest chill adventure songs I've heard in a very long time, and I'm like, this is on a mobile game. We're still doing this. And in fact, Hypergriff has recently said they're going to try to figure out if maybe doing some global concerts is a good idea and not just Chinese ones. So we could be seeing some small-scale concerts in the States at some point that I will be making an effort to fly to and go see if that happens.
The word global is very interesting there.
Global is, in this case, using the gotcha definition, which means America and Europe.
Let me hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have specified South American or Southeast Asian or Japan if that's what they meant in this regard, unfortunately. I have been playing it is technically a Metroidvania, but I'm going to call it what it is, a 2D Souls-like called Ender Lilies. I started that as my Halloween special. It's definitely got the Souls-like DNA. It's got the stamina meter. It's got the limited heals. It's got the bosses and boss mechanics thing going on. Like, it's a Souls-like.
Having played it and mentioned some of its soundtrack in this very podcast, I can absolutely confirm it's got Souls-like DNA. Or, if you want to be pedantic about it, Souls and Sanctuary DNA, perhaps.
And the soundtrack, so far, to me, seems to have been, what if I Am Setsuna's music was actually good?
Oh, that's a solid take on it.
Yeah. It's very piano-heavy. It's extremely piano-heavy. It's just actually interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's got that same melancholic energy. It's got that same, like, void world energy. But,
Yeah, exactly. But the compositions are actually not a misery to listen to.
No. It's quite lovely. So, good on the composer for this. And finally, and I would argue most importantly, given the amount of time we talked about this franchise on the show, Dynasty Warriors Origins. I played the demo.
Yeah.
So I'm playing.
How did you find it?
Yeah, honestly, well, I mean, it's Dynasty Warriors, all right.
And that's some of the biggest praise they could have.
Yeah. It plays really well. It's got kind of a greatest hits of, like, some of the features they've used in some of their main games, of their spin-offs.
Yeah.
Like, I have a partner that plays pretty much exactly like the rogue servants in Fate Samurai Remnant. I can switch to Xiahou Dun for a while, or Sun Shangjiang, or I think it was Guan Yu.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
The characters are younger, but still recognizable. Like, we got to the big meeting with Yuan Shao going into Sishui Gate, and I'm like, wait, Chen Gong's here? Why is he here? Chen Gong was here. Like, I recognized him immediately, and he's kind of a deep cut, because he only debuted in 8 Extreme Legends. And then I reached Lu Bu, and unlike most versions of Sishui Gate, this was the demo, therefore I had no choice but to pursue Lu Bu.
Yeah, they just add him as a final bit of challenge, which is a good way to do a demo, honestly, to add, here is what you might expect later on in the game.
And, the problem here is that suddenly the game stops being Dynasty Warriors and starts being Elden Ring almost mechanic for mechanic.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a problem. Like, I was able to do it and it was fun, with one bad gameplay decision that I will talk about shortly. But the actual, like, I have a limited number of heals, I'm relying on dodge iframes and jump iframes, I'm paying attention to his moveset and dodging accordingly to counter and punish. He's got a poise meter that I try to break that will refill if I let it go for too long without damaging him. It's Elden Ring. It's literally just Elden Ring. I know how Aggie feels when he dodges a Consort Radon combo now. Now, admittedly, it's Lu Bu. That should be pretty well... You know, if anyone's going to be at that level, I'm glad it's Lu Bu, because he's a danger. Which is good.
But at the same time, on a design point of view, on a even just identity point of view for why I play a Dynasty Warriors game, I hope at the very least that you'll be able, if you want to go straight on, cut a path directly through the bosses and then have those tense fights, that you can have them, sure, great actually. But I hope there's also a way to just relax, lean back in a completely unhealthy posture, just mash your squares on your triangles, and get through the game this way. Because that's the soul of Dynasty Warriors.
Yes. It's very clear to me from the way the stage is designed that is the intention. They just did not give me the option to do not pursue Lu Bu. Is all that happened
which
here.
makes sense in a demo, but in the full game, I hope I'll be able to...
I saw the path on the map they expect you to take. They just didn't let us access it.
Yeah, and I just want to stat my way over half of the cast if I want to.
I'm sure they're going to let you do that.
Even though I'm not that kind of player.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
They didn't turn the game into a Souls-like. It does have some Souls-like energy. One of the things that surprised me that made a return was duels from Dynasty Warriors 4. Remember those? I got into a duel with all sorts of random people.
And they're super showy with the way the people are making the arena.
The actual people are, like, cheering. It's like, oh, we have an audience. They're not just standing there. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
The music is Dynasty Warriors. The stage was a remix of Wall of Fate from Dynasty Warriors 4. Lu Bu's theme is still recognizably Lu Bu's theme. This is a Dynasty Warriors game.
The music was great. The music was great. It was exactly what someone that's wanted a new Dynasty Warriors soundtrack wanted, and... Yeah.
It's a Dynasty Warriors game. Done. It's a good one so far. I've only played the one stage plus the optional scary boss, and that took me about 40 minutes. The problem is a lot of that time came from unnecessary downtime. Lu Bu is an Elden Ring boss. He will kill you in 2 hits if you're not careful. This will happen a lot. Even if you are careful, sometimes you'll just do it because you're in a bad position. The problem with this is that unlike several prior entries like Warriors Orochi and recent Samurai Warriors entries, the slain screen cannot be skipped.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That is really bad design.
Like-
I was angry about this
like-
one. So you lose
like
20
the
seconds
reason-
on that alone.
Like, the reason why it felt so good to die and retry again and again in Stranger of Paradise is that with loading times included, it took basically 10 seconds to go from a death to a respawn to walk to the boss room and re-challenge them again.
Yeah, this took 20 seconds to reset to before the fight. Every time,
Yeah.
unskippably, and that's if you do all your inputs perfectly, because another bafflingly bad decision is that the restart from checkpoint button is not the default option, and yes is not the default option when you do select it.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so you will screw that up a whole bunch, especially if you die quickly. Especially...
I'm not one to call things easy fixes, given that I have no programming experience whatsoever, but this looks like an easy fix.
That one at least should be. Just set the default to something different. So you could just spam the A button and get back in there. So yeah, it takes about 30 to 45 seconds every death to get back to the fight. That's a long time of waiting for crap that doesn't actually matter. Like, that's not including loading time. That was me counting out loud at the unskippable crap I couldn't just bypass.
Yeah, especially in a game like that, at a climactic moment, you want to get in the action.
Yeah. And the fact that prior games let us skip that slain screen, but this demo at the very least did not, was deeply annoying.
Fix that for release,
Please.
And yes, that is something to be fixed, not changed at this point.
Yeah, that
It
needs...
sounds like just a straightforward problem.
That is a straightforward problem. I fully agree. That needs a big stamp of this needs to get its stuff fixed.
Yeah.
And that appears to be it for me. Because we've talked about Age of Wonders, we've talked about Arknights, we've talked about Vampire Survivors. I'm good.
That appears to be it for everyone then.
Well, then there we have it. Thank you guys so much for joining us on our anniversary/award show special. And next week we're going to be...
Next episode,
Yep.
Because we have been mostly unsatisfied with the choices for the awards, we're going to make our own.
Yep. And I feel like at least some of what we discussed today is going to be on that list.
Yeah.
Let's say
And
there's a
with-
non-zero
And
chance.
honestly,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to restrict myself to games I have actually played, as long as I know the soundtrack, Metaphor ReFantazio has a chance to pop up again.
I would, depending on what rule set I choose to use, that also has a chance. I might stick to games I've played, but we shall see. That's
Yeah.
if I don't, that one has a real shot. That was so cool.
Or maybe just a section honorable mention games we haven't played, but that sounds amazing.
Yeah, one way or the other, it deserves recognition, rightfully so.
Yes.
And with that, that is all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, you can find how to contact us in the description.
Ah, yes, the description. Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.
See you next time.
Play indie games.
See you next time.